How's it going? I'm Andrew with Investors Hub, and unfortunately, it's not Ted Ohashi Tuesday. It's going to be Ted Ohashi Thursday, which doesn't rhyme quite as well, but that's just how things worked out this week. And we're going to be talking to him about a couple of companies in his model portfolio, which is in the Cannabis Report, which he writes and is published on Investors Hub. And he's going to be talking about Khiron and Jushi. We'll also talk about the Jackson Hole Summit and how quantitative tapering might affect the cannabis industry, and also how local governments might affect the growth of the U.S. cannabis industry. So if you like the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It is the absolute best way you can help us grow. And you can also follow us on Twitter, ihub_vision. And after a quick disclaimer, we'll hear from Ted. Please note that our videos are not designed to be direct investing advice. Our channel and our content should just be one stop on the journey of trying to find out where to put your money. So some interesting news that I saw whenever I was searching for what's going on in the cannabis world this morning was there was a news story that popped up on a couple of different publications that said that in New Jersey, 70% of municipalities have banned cannabis. Now, it was a little bit of clickbait in that when I actually read the article, it said that a lot of those municipalities were just sort of buying for time until they could decide what distributors and what retailers to let in, and they just wanted more time to do, local government stuff. But it did raise the question, right? How much do you think that local governments, so things below the state level, will impact the growth of cannabis here in the U.S. if we see, general legalization?
Yeah, well, we can look at the Canadian example. We went through that in 2018, 2019. We have a similar kind of government structure, if you will. We have the federal government, and then we have the provinces, and then we have the municipalities. And each of them have carved out sort of an area of interest for themselves. And so it did cause some confusion. It caused some delays. It caused some issues like you're mentioning where a municipality or two might buy for time. They're not moving quite as quickly as they thought. So all of those things happen. Legalization it sounds simple on the surface of it, but you are ending up in a regulated industry. And so it can be difficult, and it can be, there's lots of different interests involved. And I would expect to see that everywhere if you legalize state by state, which kind of looks like the direction that it's heading for now. Maybe next year around this time we'll have a change with Mr. Schumer and his act, but even then there will be these little niggly problems, so it's unavoidable.
So, Ted, with the Jackson Hole Summit happening, there's fears in the market that they might start doing quantitative tapering, that the Fed will change its monetary policy stance. And I was wondering what you thought on how the cannabis industry would react to quantitative tapering. And I know that there's cannabis industries all over the place, not just here in the U.S. Your model portfolio has cannabis companies all over the Western Hemisphere. However, I was also wondering, how much do cannabis companies get impacted by rising interest rates? I know that they struggle to interact with banks, and that there are restrictions in place to how that they can, deal with money in these financial institutions.
Well, so far they've had trouble. Some small institutions, credit unions, and so forth have reached out to the industry, but I was speaking to somebody yesterday, as a matter of fact, in the cannabis industry, and they said, we don't even have a corporate credit card, and so don't think that you can go into a dispensary, for example, and put your purchases on your Visa or MasterCard. It's not going to happen at this stage. So there are a number of different things. If I look back to March of 2020. That was when the pandemic was just hitting. People were realizing all of a sudden that this might be a serious thing. That was the best month of the year for cannabis sales. And so there's the possibility, there's a good possibility that cannabis will have some counter-cyclical tendencies toward it. So, that's a good thing for cannabis investors. I think when things are good, things will be good for cannabis. But if things tighten up or get worse or get seriously worse, cannabis will have some countervailing sort of pressures that make it perform a little bit better. In the old days, we used to talk about the food companies being countercyclical, and to a certain extent, they still are. But I think cannabis will be that way too. So I'm not overly worried about tapering and that sort of thing right now.
So people talk about how whenever the interest rate goes up for loans and what have you, that growth companies tend to struggle because it becomes more expensive to take on debt. Does the cannabis industry have that same problem, or are there other sort of counter-cyclical aspects to it that compensate for it?
Well, the cannabis companies so far in Canada and the US have been dependent on markets for funding. Way more than your traditional industries that can go to banks or lenders and get working capital loans and that sort of thing. And so to the extent that tightening or a recession or any of these things, higher interest rates, impact the stock markets, then it will impact the cannabis companies more. And that's why investors these days are focused very much on companies that are delivering revenues, especially companies that are in positive cash flow territory, because they've sort of broken that dependency on the markets for money. But if it's a very small company and they don't have current revenues and the market goes bad, that's your formula for problems. So that's what I would watch out for with cannabis companies.
So let's talk about some of the companies that are in your model portfolio. Khiron is one that people search for. I can see what they're searching for whenever they click on our videos. That one seems to be pretty popular. So what's going on in the world of Khiron?
Well, they just reported earnings for the second quarter. The results were, I think, pretty good. They're a company that is in medical cannabis sales, and they're right now they're concentrated in Latin America. About 75% of their revenue in medical cannabis comes from Latin America, but about 25% comes from Europe. And they had a very good result in Europe, and I'm looking for them over the next 6 to 12 months to be kind of 50% European and 50% Latin American. So it's a company that I think is doing very, very well. It's maybe moving a little more slowly than other companies just because of the nature of their business. They're dealing in kind of regulated products. They need to get approvals to move medical cannabis from, say, Colombia to Brazil, which is something that they just did. But it's also a company that has tremendous growth prospects. I mean, the two markets in Latin America that they're going to be going after in the next 6 to 12 months are Brazil and Mexico. And those are two very large populated countries. And so, they have great opportunities there. And although some companies have run into trouble in Europe, Khiron hasn't. And so their shipments to Germany have gone through, their shipments to the UK have gone through, sales are getting underway. And about a quarter of their medical cannabis sales now are in Europe. And as I say, I expect that sector to grow a little bit faster. And so, this time next year or sooner, we could be talking about a company that's 50% European and 50% Latin American.
So how about Jushi? That's a company that we've spoken about in the past, and I don't think that we've talked about recently. How are they doing right now?
Well, again, they're doing quite well. The stock market isn't reflecting it so much. Their stock has been relatively weak. They're a medium-sized multi-state operator, and since about February, that entire group has been in a correction. And so, if you look at any of them, they're all down from February, and Jushi is one of them. But it's a company that just keeps delivering on its promises. They give guidance to revenue and to EBITDA, and invariably the results are very close to guidance. The company's extremely well managed. I think they have people in key spots throughout the company that are very capable. And so I think it's a stock that has corrected from around $10 to around $6, going from the high to the low in that kind of February to August period. And so at these levels, I mean, I think it's going to be a great investment for anybody who owns it.
So any final thoughts?
No, I know you always like me to give my disclosures, and so I don't own the stocks that I've been talking about, and don't plan to buy or sell them in the next 72 hours. But other than that, I think we're almost at the end of summer now, and so I anticipate seeing the cannabis group pick up quite well over the next month.
Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tell us down in the comments what you thought about the video if you hadn't already. And yeah, follow us on Twitter, iHub_vision, and I'll see you again soon.